Hello everybody, welcome to the channel today. Today I'm going to be talking about my time around when I was in Crossway and a lot about what I kind of went through with dating and everything, and eventually meeting my wife and getting married. So that's really what I want to talk about. It's just kind of, so of course around this time, of course, I've been going to Crossway, and as I mentioned in a previous video, that there was a lot I had to break free from regarding past beliefs about dating and stuff like that, and I really had to let go of all of that. And my time at Crossway really helped, really somehow just really made things clear to me, and I was able to somehow I was able to finally just see it for what it was, and really break free from it, and really kind of explore what God really meant for dating, and what He really wants, and a lot of that just had to do with just learning just embracing the concepts of being saved by faith, and being having grace and forgiveness for whatever you did. I already had accepted Christ, but it was like all about, there were many things like this Joshua Harris, all the Joshua Harris stuff, that was more just works based, and I really had to make a major shift in the way my thinking, and this for some reason that happened here while I was at Crossway. So let's see. So basically, at some point, I was kind of, after breaking and starting to realize and break free from a lot of those ideas, I eventually started entering the dating world, and actually starting to try to date people whenever I could. I mean, there were a small handful of people that I talked to and spoke to in person where I was, and dated and talked to them and started dating them for like 1 or 2 dates, but mainly one. But there was I know there was a lot of going to basically dating sites to look for people. I remember there was dealing with there was one Christian dating site called ChristianDatingFree.com. It was free. So and there were a few people I got to talk to on there, and there was one that I actually did end up actually dating. We actually met kind of like, we actually agreed to meet down in Nashville. We were kind of halfway, and we had our date in Nashville at Opry Mills, and so and that was a pretty good date. But I mean, I guess at the end of the day, we just sort of both prayed, and we just decided this wasn't right for us. Right, we weren't the right people for each other. So, and so, one thing I can say about certain, there were obviously a handful of people that were not too bad talking to, or dating, or whatever it ended up being. There were also a lot of other situations where I was dealing with a lot of pretentious women, and arguably kind of some of them were kind of nuts, to be honest. There was I remember there were a lot. I know there was a few girls that were that had this feeling that they just felt like spiritually, they acting spiritually superior to you or something. There was one. I remember there was one time I actually had what was it? A female. It was apparently she was a youth pastor of all things. Somehow, I was talking to some girl on Tinder who was a youth pastor, and I remember she asked me some weird, obscure doctrinal question, and I gave her an obscure answer. And of course, I never heard back from her after that. So it was really bizarre. Um, I remember there was one time I did meet somebody. I did date one person that was from on eHarmony, that was some type of missionary or some. It was, and she kind of was. I don't know what her. I'm trying to remember what her story was, but it was like she was. I think she had some desire to be just ministered in the, guess, the northern Memphis area or something. I don't know what she went to another country or not. I think she did. I don't know where she went though. I don't remember. But I had a lot of difficulty. I know because of my autism and stuff like that, and just things were getting kind of difficult. I mean, aside from some decent, fairly decent, a small handful of decent um, dates that I had, there were a lot of pretty bad encounters. Um, uh, there was, and the majority of these were never ended up being dates, but I mean, there were some people who were asking weird and crazy stuff on Tinder, or I mean, there was one person I remember that was sort of like flipped out because I asked her what church she's going to, and she just said, "I don't think that's any of your business." And I was just like, "Well, I'm just asking the question. I mean, that's what we're here to do, is talk, right?" She flipped out over that. Um, so, and so, yeah, there's a big mix of my experience outside of dating sites, but as a whole, it's been like there's a small few that have been okay dates. There was, and we were semi-relatable, able to converse with them. And then then there's the people who are hyper religious or very pretentious and stuff like that on a spiritual level, and those really left a bad taste in my mouth and really kind of gave me a bad feeling for the church as a whole, to be honest. And then there's, of course, there's the Christian girls who just seem to just cast off all restraint, and I haven't had dating, but spoken to all of these people in the context of a potential date. But I mean, but there are quite a few I've seen that they're just kind of wild, and so it's been a mixed bag there. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess with that, I mean, over a few years of doing that, I have gotten frustrated finding somebody. Um, and of course, I mean, I was just sort of thinking to myself, it's like, okay, we got these ultra spiritually pretentious Christian girls on the one side. You got the ones who are just wild, and then there's just the rare ones you don't see anymore. You only see like once in a blue moon. You don't ever see them again. And I was sort of like thinking to myself, it's like, is there any normal girls that are just normal, like they're not acting spiritually pretentious and all this stuff, or they just they believe, have a sound belief in their Savior, and don't have not all this weird stuff that they're just following because who knows who put it in their head. And then and of course all the other ones that I mentioned, they're just doing whatever they want to do. I do remember there was, and of course there the ones that seem like there were also some others that sort of like I had a bit of a doctrinal issue with others as well. I mean, it wasn't just me running into that. There was one situation where I somehow ended up with I was talking to someone who was pretty easy to talk to, but at the end, somehow by the end of it, I found out she was a preterist, and I was just like, how am I going to deal with that? Since at the time I was very, very into eschatology, and I had a bit, and there was a bit, and while I was for a very short time, I was just playing along, saying, okay, I think I can accept that, but then something in me just wouldn't stand for it. I don't know how. It was just like eventually I just kind of flipped, I guess, and just said I can't do this, and that was just it. And that was not even really a date. It was somebody who I was just talking over. How did we meet? We met on eHarmony, and eventually we exchanged phone numbers and stuff like that. But eventually I decided I couldn't do it. And so, yeah, I mean, with everything, I mean, just implying and throwing Joshua Harris's beliefs aside, there was still some sound advice that I was following, such as letting God lead you to the person He wants you to marry, and I still believe, and those are still important things. And also, there's many people say, "Do not marry an unbeliever," and it's like, yes, I know that, and there's also, I mean, the Bible kind of discourages that as well. Paul wrote about that in 1 Corinthians. But let's see. But there was also people who are saying, well, marry somebody who's at the same spiritual level as you. And the thing is, it's like literally nobody was on my level. And even the people who are arguably on the level was like, there was sort of a disconnect. So the people who were following the Lord on some level like me, they were either way behind or way ahead. At the Life Church, there were a lot of people who, like I mentioned, who jumped onto don't believe I mentioned this. There were a lot of people who joined leadership programs and went on mission trips. Those are things I did not do. And so I don't know why it didn't end up that way. Maybe I just wasn't ready. But that kind of created this disconnect from those people. While at the same time I'm striving as much as I can, I can't ever measure up to it makes it impossible to measure up to those other people, which is just frustrating. And that's kind of the thing with, like I mentioned, I was talking to female pastors and stuff, so whatever the hell that is supposed to mean. And then there was that missionary, which is sort of like, it was hard to be taken serious. I felt like I was hard to be taken seriously as a Christian by people in that crowd, I think. And I feel like And so, with that, I mean, since I was kind of dealing with this major disparity between people who are just out there wild and crazy, Christians who are out there wild and crazy, and ones who are just somehow brought up a long time in the church, and I guess they just have this warped view of Christianity, probably because they've been living in it so long. They just it's hard. It's kind of sad to say that, but I mean, I think it's the truth that some people are just born in religiosity, even when they're in a church with sound doctrine. That doesn't mean anything if they're not able to live the Christian life the way it should be lived, and they haven't learned how to do that. And I feel like that's a big problem with the church. People are not learning really learning how to really grow in their faith, I guess. And so, I guess, so with that, I was really questioning a lot of those ideas. Is like, well, I know all the Bible says that, but what am I supposed to? But maybe there's something else more to this than just following all the rules, if you know what I mean, or just doing everything by the book. Maybe the way we should be looking at this is something else, other than just doing things the way they should be doing. So I really started. Those are those questions that have constantly spun through my mind. It's like something doesn't feel right with the way I'm being told to do things and the way I should be expecting things to go. And while at the same time I'm trying to apply these ideas of maybe things aren't meant to be perfect, I'm running into people on the other extreme who just like bad boys rather than regular men, or they just do whatever they want and go with whatever guy they want to, or whatever it is, not really caring about good marriage material or not. So I do know. So there was as I was coming out of 2014. I was towards the end of 2014. I was kind of just kind of bit done with online dating and just majority of dating in general. There was kind of just frustration. I remember that I was starting to go to restaurants and just talk to different people there, and not really doing much other than just talking and just getting conversation going. I guess it goes without saying that all my difficulties had to do with my autism. That's really is front and center to the big issues that I've been dealing with, is why that's all a problem. But getting into conversations has never been easy. But while I was just going to restaurants, I've been having opportunities to just talk to whatever waitress is there, and I'll just spark up a topic and just make a comment about something, and we'll have a little short conversation there, and or I may just ask some question, or just give some compliment or something, just whatever I could think of. And I was doing things like that for a while. At some point during this time, I was sort of seeing that everything was because everything seemed like it was just felt impossible. I started to I was starting to consider a major shift in my circumstances, and to be honest, I was actually just starting to consider just very random ideas on how to find this so-called person. So there were a few ideas that could be considered a bit unhinged that I kind of went about, but I guess at that point I didn't really care. There was some other issue. There was some time where I was working at a place that was more. It was a place that had more like it was a it was a printer. It was a printer company that they had their base was out in Japan, and so they had a location down in Memphis, and so I was working there, and I had some interaction with some Japanese people there. Had a Japanese boss, and there was one guy there was Chinese, but anyway, that was interesting. Got they, at some point, I was kind of thinking about the ideas of, well, what if I started moving, came up with the idea of moving to Japan or something like that, and I started trying to learn Japanese, and I was basically memorizing the entire hiragana and katakana alphabets just to really learn what I could learn. And so I was just, so then I was kind of, and yeah, there was a lot of things I was thinking about, just like, well, what would it be like to meet somebody in Japan? What would it be like to meet someone down there? And so, or just live down there. And it was just ideas I was just considering, and I remember watching a lot of videos about people living in Japan and what it's like down there, and sort of just figuring things out. And there was one place I noticed there was some Japanese restaurant. It was a hibachi restaurant close to where I was working, actually. So I decided to go down there, and I didn't know these. I guess it didn't really occur to me that all the people were Chinese, not Japanese, but it is what it is. And so I kind of went over there and started just eating their food. I enjoyed it. I like hibachi, so it was good. That was what I had for lunch sometimes. Um, there were a few. So as I was going there, I was getting to know one of the front cashiers there, and she was we were talking from time to time. And then there was also this one girl who was some server lady, and I remember really feeling attracted to her. There were a few times where I talked to her as well, and eventually that server from that table waitress person, who really just sort of just serves the tables and does some work in the back, I think. Eventually, I asked her if she wanted to go on some sort of date, and she's like, "Yeah, I can give you my phone number or something like that, and you can give me your phone number." And so that's what we did. And eventually, I found out her name was Yi. We went out and we started to just talk on the phone a lot. And one Sunday, we decided to go on a date. We went to a Chinese church, and we went to Cookie Canucks there. One of those they used to be called the Bigfoot Lodge, but they're the place in Memphis that's known for their gigantic burgers and stuff like that. But that's where we went for our first date. And then she wanted to watch Star Wars, just episode 7, because she hasn't really been watched any of that stuff down in China. So that's what we did for our first date. So our second date was, I actually got her mother and her aunt came down to visit her, and she wanted to, I guess, one, to have them meet me, and two, they just wanted to go somewhere and do something. And they talked about doing, and the discomfort about meeting family so quickly aside, um, we were going to try and go to. They wanted to go to Opryland Hotel, um, and I was sort of talking to her. It's like, well, there's a lot of snow coming, and there's a kind of a big snowstorm that's being predicted, and so I'm not really sure how that's going to work out. And I kind of went back and forth, but eventually I said, okay, well, I guess we can try this. It feels a little bit kind of a bit risky, but we can go ahead and do it. So we kind of made the trip down to Nashville to go to Opryland Hotel, and so of course, we had separate rooms. Of course, so no worries there. But they got to see Opryland Hotel, look around, and it was a lot of snow. So I mean, there was quite a bit of ice. It was the parking lots in Opry Mills were all ice. You couldn't walk over to the mall from the hotel if you wanted to. It was pretty treacherous just to walk. Um, but we made it. But that's what we did, and everyone enjoyed that. Um, we did kind of go swimming while we were there. There was some pool over there, and of course there was a hot tub out in the winter snow as well, and that was a bit fun too. That was quite adventurous too, running out into the ice cold snow to go to the hot tub. um, so there's that. And yeah, that was our second date, and after that we just continued dating. Um, when we were at the Chinese church, there was somebody who was talking to her about Jesus, and just the gospel while she was there, and Pastor Ron there's a guy named Pastor Ron. He was the assistant pastor there, and sure enough, he was American. He was married to a Chinese wife, and he was American and assistant pastor. So he was definitely talking to me about it, and helping advise me on that. And and yeah, he was just kind of guiding me through that. And eventually, everything worked out. And so my wife, her name her name was Yi. She also goes by Emily. Eventually, she accepted Christ and got baptized at the Chinese church. So we can eventually continue dating, and it was all great. It was actually something, just somehow everything just kind of seemed to be working out for some reason, and it just it was working out, doing really well. There were a few times where I had to help her with a few things like driver's license test, and things like that. And some point while within that year we were dating, she had her purse stolen, practically out of my car, and the passport was in her purse. So she lost her passport and her visa, and so we had to travel all the way to Washington, D.C. to get a new passport for her. And so that was quite an experience. Yeah, and so Yeah, it was a pretty wild drive. Just going 2 days driving down there with her to help her figure out how to get to where she needed to go. Since it was kind of like we had to just figure all this out um, based on just what information we could find um, with the Chinese embassy and everything. But we got to figure it out, and eventually, eventually she got her new passport, and we were good there. Um, then we eventually, after about at the end, when we were reaching the next year, um, she was asking me if I wanted to go to China because she was going to go visit her family, and and that was a big deal. So I went down there with her. I met all her family and got to see them. So not knowing Chinese, it was kind of difficult to make out what everyone was saying, but I knew I was learning a little bit of Chinese at the time, so I wasn't completely lost at all times, but sometimes. But it was an interesting experience, just seeing everything down there, what China's like. It's like pretty huge. Yeah, there's lots of infrastructure. It's like you could just drive for miles and just see more residential, more business, and more other commercial infrastructure. And it's just like it just keeps going and going. And it's she lived in so we went in through Hong Kong, and we traveled through Shenzhen and they lived in Dongguan, which is just immediately north of Shenzhen. And there was a lot of factories down there, and so very much a lot of things were just you would just see factories here for this and for that, and it's just like it's just about everything you could think of was made there. My aunts, or my aunt-in-law, her aunt was had a lot of she was running some factory there, and which she came to own. She was she had a lot of they were doing a lot of plastic. They did mainly plastic bags, and so I got to see a lot of their machinery and stuff, how they were doing things and stuff. And there were some other buildings within that same complex that were leased to other businesses. Noticed they were working on some. I think they were building some speakers. Apparently, I believe the brand was Klipsch. And interesting enough, that later that Christmas, I actually did see a Klipsch speaker down in Macy's. So it was like, hey, I got to see the end product of what was actually built in that factory. It was very interesting to actually discover that. And so yeah, eventually we came home back to good old Memphis, Tennessee, and we continued to live life and continue to date. Got to see some of my family over Christmas, and that was very great to do. We went to and around that time, Rogue One came out. I remember we all went to the movies together. Emily, and my mom and stepdad. We all went to see that, and I just remember that. And so eventually, around the turn of that year, I eventually proposed to her. I got a ring, and we got engaged, and we got married later that year, and it it's been great ever since. And she's been an incredible person. It's been really great to have her, to marry her. Um, don't know what it'd be like. Don't know what life would be like without her. So, so really, God really turned out and really brought the right person. And despite everything that I'd gone through, somehow He made it all work. And I found Emily. That's all I have to say about that. It was a really, I think the main thing was, takeaway is that, yeah, I went through a lot of difficulties. Part a great deal that had to do with just being autistic, and but also just dealing with certain types of people that were just didn't work well, and I had to really, and a lot of what God did really subverted the expectation of what people said I was supposed to do. It was kind of like I was being told since I was growing in my faith, I was being told extremist things like not dating and stuff like that, but also more sound things like wait on God, and then also let God lead you, and of course make sure make sure they're a Christian, and et cetera, and make sure they're following the Lord the way you're following the Lord, et cetera. But that didn't really work out. That didn't really happen that way. And so it really goes to show that all the rules that people make, they're meaningless. All the rules, all the don't do this and don't do that, they have no meaning, because when it comes to what God wants to do for you in your life, it's not going to be about following all man's rules. It's not about man's rules. It's about God's rules and what God wants. And he's going to do things you won't expect. So that's all I have to say. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. All right, thanks for watching. Bye.